everybody. A couple weeks ago, we had Kel Haney. I call her the phone guru. We had Kel Haney on a couple weeks ago. we had Kel Haney on a couple weeks ago, and we ran through our hour with so much left to uncover that we immediately got on the phone with Kel that afternoon and said, "Hey, will you do us a favor and come back?" And so she obliged, and we're formatting this as an Ask Me Anything webinar. Great to have everyone. My name's Trevor Nelson, Jason Ledlow. We're from HGA Fundraising. We provide the most profitable auction items in the space. That's enough about us. We also host this.
Oh no, there's always more about us.
We also host this really, really cool webinar, and we just happen to have world-class guests, and today is no different. So love Kel giving us her time, another hour with everybody. Ask Me Anything format. There's a lot of stuff that we can double click on from last episode, and yeah, happy to have you once again. You know how much we think about you and the work that you do. So, but hey, Kel, for folks that didn't come, do us a favor. Tell folks who you are, what you do, and what your passion is in the space, please.
Yeah, Kel Haney, she, her pronouns. I'm the founder and president of Kel Haney Consulting. What I do is I work with not-for-profits to build and retain their mid-level donors, specifically through drum roll 5-minute phone calls.
Yeah.
So really the idea being that mid-level needs something else that is different than what you're doing with major gifts, that's different than what you're doing with grassroots. They need some extra attention. And the best way to do that, and what I've spent 20 years doing, I've made over 20,000 asks myself. I've helped, I don't know, over a dozen not-for-profits, maybe it's closer to 3 dozen at this point, raise over $20 million since I've been doing this. And it's predominantly in mid-level, and it's almost exclusively includes phone calls.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Kel,
Go.
Can I jump out here and just ask a question real quick?
Always.
This is the thing that this is one of the things that how, and I know you're going to go through the, we can talk about this. We've talked about the 4 corners. You talked about, having everything laid out, what you're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get through that first call though? I don't know, but anybody show of hands who really, you got to make the calls, you got to do it, and you'll go walk the dog, you'll go
yes,
go wash some windows.
Yes.
Maybe the procrastination piece.
Go get a root canal because you're trying to figure out how not to start those calls. So talk about that.
Okay. Well, you're truly, for so many of my clients, that is the hardest part, Jason. And what I will say is, like, time block it, just truly schedule it. And if you have to move it, you have to reschedule it, because what really happens is just, we'll do anything. Well, like you said, we'll wash the windows. We will write a dozen emails. We're like, this can be an email. This doesn't have to be a phone call. It has to be a phone call. And what I would say is accountability. So obviously when I'm coaching and training folks, I offer that accountability. If not, do that within your team and be like, okay, I need you to keep me to it. So if you two are both having to make phone calls, I would say, all right, Jason, Trevor, like, you two are going to keep each other accountable, that, like, you're actually going to pick up the phone and do it. Because I will say, it's so much harder in our heads than it is when we're actually on the phone with someone. It's like we go through all of the different scenarios. And I think a lot of people on this call, feel free to, like, raise your hand if this is you, like, live in a place of, like, perfection trap. You're like, well, I want to know everything and I want to be perfect. And the whole idea is, you're not going to be perfect, nor should you be perfect. If you come off too slick, if you come off too prepared, they're not going to want to talk to you. They want to talk to each of you. They want to talk to Abby, Beverly, Brian, Jen, Hannah. They want to talk to each of you. They don't want it to be scripted, and they don't want it to be, like, overly prepared. So
you mean whenever they come across and they say, hey there, Kel, this is Jason Ledlow with ABC Charity. We're calling up here with a great opportunity for you.
Click.
Yeah.
Click.
It's an immediate disconnect.
Because that's the hardest part. And that's what makes these calls. And I'm very clear that there's some parts of what you're already doing with your fundraising outreach that work really well with phone calls. And there's some specific techniques that need to be a little bit different for phone calls. So that's why, when it's just a phone call, we don't feel any accountability when someone calls us on one of these things. So that's our job as the fundraisers, is to figure out how to immediately get out who we are, why we're calling. For those folks who want to look at what we talked about last time, we could get even further into that.
Yeah.
But I will say I had a good conversation with James, who I don't think he's in here right now, but who was with Hole in the Wall Gang. Like he followed up afterwards and asked me some
Cool.
good questions. And what I did last time, folks, for those of you who weren't there, is I showed two different options of, a very back-footed way to get into a call of, hi, am I speaking with Trevor? Hi, Trevor, this is
Right.
Kel.
Yeah.
I'm the executive director of organization XYZ. How are you today? And then was like a lot of back and forth and a lot of dead space that doesn't work, that gets the other person's mind, spinning. And instead to come in really front-footed, Trevor, so
Yeah.
happy that you picked up the phone. My name's Kel Haney. I'm the executive director of organization XYZ. You were great. You did a donation of $1,000 last year. We're getting ready to do our spring fundraiser. Would love to get you more involved. But first and foremost, I'm curious to see if you saw our email about this, or if you're going to come join us for this event, or you've been here 10 years now. That's amazing. Or that was your first gift. That's amazing. What brought you in the first place? So it was
Yeah.
interesting talking to James, is James said, I actually prefer number one with the back
Okay.
and forth. And I
Okay.
said, okay, why? And he goes, it makes me feel more comfortable
I knew
as
you were
the
going to say
person
that.
who's making
Yeah.
the call.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like,
Exactly.
exactly. So for
Yeah.
you all, some of these specific techniques will feel a little uncomfortable for you as you're adopting them, but it's not about our comfort as much as I like that. And I say it's like taking the ick out of the ask. When it comes down to technically keeping somebody on a call with you, when you have a shared passion about an organization, you're going to have to get over your own discomfort and
Mhm.
trust that like this works different than face to face.
No
Kel,
question.
when you said, well, I felt, he said, I feel, more comfortable this way.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't this a situation where you have to put yourself in the listeners and the person being
Yes,
called? How are they going to receive it? It's not how it
exactly.
feels
Sure.
to you saying it, but how they're
Yes,
going to receive it.
Hmm.
exactly. And so
Understand your audience. Yeah.
yeah, and if any of you are former theater kids like me, I was a theater director for 20 years, you know that. So exactly, Trevor, what you just said, like know your audience and be aware that this is for your audience. You are not making this call for your own comfort level. I want you to feel comfortable. I'm going to do everything I can to coach you into feeling comfortable, but there is definitely going to be some growing pains and some discomfort in a big way.
Yeah. And I think that's obviously, I mean, this is what you do for a living, coaching folks up, but that's
Yeah.
just so folks understand, that's really normal to feel that way. And I can assure you, after a few reps, it's going to go away too, right? But unequivocally, like what you said with James, that was good for him. And James is probably not a selfish cat. He's probably, very thoughtful. But I
Yes,
totally get it.
totally.
It's almost like cutting a corner. And with this,
Mhm.
we got to go. I just love your approach because it's like 5 minutes, and whether it's you get the person on the phone or it's a voicemail, it's like you go
Yep.
right for the money. And I don't mean
Yeah.
you go to ask for the money or invite someone to give, but you go right at
To
like,
talking
hey,
about the money.
this is how
Yeah.
much you gave. I
Yes.
actually think that it's very assumptive in a great way.
Hmm.
But the thing of it is, with time and attention and the fact that they weren't expecting your phone call, it's an old term, but you can't beat around the bush. You know what I mean?
No.
You got to get right to the
Yeah.
point. And you can
Well,
do
and
that. You can do that thoughtfully, carefully, kindly, all those things, but you got
absolutely.
to get to it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Well,
Yeah.
and what I always want to do is in that first 15 seconds, I want to get out like the whole breadth of what this phone call is going to be.
Yeah.
Because what will happen, folks, is that if you get on that call and you're saying, oh, it's just a thank you call, or I just wanted to see what you thought of this event or this performance you attended, you're
Yeah.
setting yourself up and them for a like kind of icky bait and switch.
Right.
Because if
Oh,
they
yeah.
think that all you're doing, like, and it should be both, it's always both.
Yeah.
And so there's a
Yeah.
transparency and a generosity about, I work a lot with performing arts orgs. So
Yeah.
one way to really get in, if you've got any folks, any kind of experiential element to your not-for-profit, or like it's like specifically really grassroots locally, like, or we all have that. There's something about your org that ties the people who care about your org together. Like that's what you're going to start the conversation with. But you want to
Yeah.
also say, so if I'm calling it, it's a dog rescue, Trevor, and I'm saying, thank you so much for giving $1,000 to our dog rescue. Would love to get you more involved. We're on our spring campaign, but first and foremost, that was your 10th gift. Like, what is it that keeps you with us? Or that was your first gift, or I see you attended our benefit a month ago. I'm sorry we didn't get to meet in person. What did you think of that performance that we had?
Yeah.
So, but I said at the beginning, we'd love to get you more involved. We do have a spring fundraiser. So it's not going to be a surprise when this conversation also includes an ask.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
your
yeah,
point,
yeah,
so where
absolutely.
you're going is, let's not spend a lot of time going, hey, how are you doing? How's
Correct.
the
Yeah.
weather? How's
Yeah.
this going on? Get to the point, let them understand that you are
Yeah.
calling, you're being very
Yeah.
specific, so that way you value their time and what they're
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah. And if
So,
Can I?
and
Go
once you
ahead.
get all that out there, if like then you end up talking about the weather, that's fine too. Like
yeah.
once you get it out there,
Yeah.
then like you don't have to stay at that 90 miles an hour. Like
Yeah.
you're setting the stage for the conversation.
Yeah.
And you take a deep breath and actually be in conversation with
Mhm.
Yeah.
someone because you've
No
put it all
question.
out there.
No
Marvy was going to
question.
say something.
No,
Um,
I really want to. I really want to get a call for questions.
I love
Because
this.
we will go
Please,
back and
folks.
forth. Yeah, we will
Yeah,
go
we'll
back and
keep
forth for
talking,
an
but
hour.
truly, yeah,
well, yeah, everybody get your questions out there. So I'm going to throw one at you, Kel, because,
sure.
in your initial thing, and you've done this like a couple of weeks ago when we did, you said, hey, you gave $1,000 last year. We'd love to
Yeah.
follow up on that, have you help. What if, and I'm not talking about a cold call. We can
Mhm.
deviate between those two, but
Sure.
somebody you have a relationship, whether it's a
Mhm.
personal relationship or, like you said, maybe they attended an event. How do you get there? They haven't given any money yet,
Mhm.
but they have, and I'm going to assume that they have capacity. Okay.
Okay.
Something. Let's make that assumption before we get the call. How are you going
Yeah.
to make transition in that to ask to get them to be,
Sure. I mean, I
make
will say
that ask?
firstly that sometimes the closest connection is not actually the best person to make the actual ask for
Yep.
the money. I'm going to say that. So I
Yep.
think part of it is what I always recommend, and this is whether I've got a fundraiser who's a very part-time fundraiser who sees, somebody that they know shows up on their list because they attended a show and they're like, I don't
Mhm.
feel comfortable calling that person, to a board member who says, I don't feel particularly comfortable making that particular ask to my friend or colleague. I'm never going to, I mean, unless you're the executive, if you're the leader or you're the fundraiser, like that is always your job. So I will find a way to get you feeling more comfortable. But if that's not your primary purpose at an organization, then I'm going to say, like, be as generous as possible in terms of sharing not just the contact information, but the like warm connection. So it can be that the call, Jason, can be like truly like, I want to tell you more about the org, would love to get you involved. I'm
Yeah.
going to actually, if you're game, I'd love for you to meet with the executive director. So no, that's not exactly to your point. But I really would say, like, if that particular relationship feels like particularly uncomfortable for some reason to make that ask, then there may be somebody else. And if it
Mhm.
has to be you, and like we could go down that route if you want, if it has to be
Well,
you, then like I can talk about like some specific mindset things that can.
well, when I say a relationship, I think this is something that a lot of people get really confused with. When I say we have a relationship,
Mhm.
if they've attended an event,
Yeah.
if they've been to something, we have that means that we have a relationship. Now, maybe
Yep. Yep.
I've never talked to Trevor. I've
Yep.
never
Yep.
met
Yep.
him, don't know him, nothing else. But I
Mhm.
do know that he and his wife came to a walkathon that they did. And I've heard about him through somebody else. And somebody said, Kel said, you ought to call this guy. I think he'd be really great for the organization. That's when I say, so there is a relationship. We do
Okay.
have some kind of a
Oh, then
connection.
that's easy. So
Yeah.
then it really is a like you can acknowledge you're calling them out of the blue, but sorry, I'm keep using you, Trevor, but it's like if this
No, I
person
want you to.
doesn't attend an event, then being able to call, saying like specific immediately, like your first and last name, like, hi, Trevor, we actually haven't met yet, but my name's Kel Haney. I'm the executive director of organization XYZ. And I'm calling you. Were so great. Like you came with Sarah to our fundraising event last month. I so appreciate you being there. Sorry that we didn't get a moment in person. But Sarah mentioned that like you may like to know some more about our org. It's a perfect time to talk because we're just kicking off our spring fundraiser. We're actually looking to build our match right now. We're looking for a few people to do donations of $5,000 to $15,000 towards our larger match. So it's a good time to chat. So wanted to just touch base and like see what your big takeaway from that event was. So
Awesome.
I've already set up that I'm going to be asking I'm going to be asking Trevor for 5 to 15K and just see like, is this the moment? Is this the moment to be involved? But to your point, Jason, it's using whatever that connective tissue already is. If you
Yeah.
don't have connective tissue with this person, then it is a super cold call, and that is not
Yeah.
actually worth your time. So it's like, what is that connection? And I would say, I had a LinkedIn post last week, and somebody asked the question of, how do you know what to ask? And I will write another post about this, but the larger thought is, what are you actually curious about? Like, is it curious about what brought them to the event? Is it curious about why they said yes to the event? Is it curious about their takeaway, or what was their favorite part, or, sometimes I like to question, like, did it meet like your expectations? Was it different than your expectations? Like, what are you and your organization actually curious about? And that's the question you should be asking.
Yeah, I think organizations are constantly scratching their head. Hey, what did they think about this? What it's like, well,
Yeah.
we're like, oh, hey, send out a survey. I think that's really, really cool. Or you could just get on the phone and
Yeah.
find out. And that way you don't have to guess at your next committee meeting, board
Yeah.
meeting, when you're planning the next event. Another thing that you hit on, Kel, which I think is uncanny, is like a natural question, maybe like, well, who do we call? Like the prospect
Yeah.
list and things like that. And I think
Yeah.
that a lot of folks would have that question, no matter
Mhm.
how far along they are in the
Mhm.
process. I think an event where you had 200 people, whether you met them before or not, is a great
Yeah.
place
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
start.
Totally.
Right? You
Totally.
know what I mean? Like, and
Totally.
those community events are just so huge right now. So I think that's a great nudge for folks.
Yeah.
And I love
Well,
tying that in
well,
to
you
a
know,
particular
I
campaign.
think I
Yep.
think to your point, I think it's okay to profile people too. And I think we take this
Yeah.
as a weird word. Well, they're profiling me.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we need to do. We need to look at if
For
we're
sure.
looking at
You're
connections that we
prospecting.
have,
Yeah.
and we're going down the list, and we're saying, can that person write a check for $10,000 and not miss it?
Mm-hmm.
Well, if they can, yes. Okay, well, I know where that is. Now, maybe I don't know, maybe I'm not sure.
Hmm.
How are we trying to connect with them? Because maybe that we do have an upcoming event, maybe this person can't write a check for $10,000, but they know everybody
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they have a great deal, and maybe we want
That's
them
worth
to
your
come
time.
attend.
Yeah.
So I think, having an understanding of when I'm calling, what I'm calling for. You mentioned a match. If I'm specifically calling for a match, I want to call people that have the ability to match.
Yeah.
I mean, we want
Totally.
to, because it's kind of like, if otherwise you're looking for a needle in a stack of needles.
Yeah. And there's nothing, I think the thing is it's just what I think about, I mean, a lot of my work really, and Brian, I like your question. We'll get
Brian's
to
got a
that. And
question. Cassie's got a question
Cassie, a
too. Yeah.
question, we'll get there.
Yeah.
I think that, I mean, donor research is really important, is really
Yes.
important especially when it comes to these phone calls, because they do take time and energy. So you want to be strategic about who you're calling. It doesn't have to be icky, and it doesn't have to be, I'm not affiliated with any of the research tech companies, but I'll say, like, I end up working with iWave a lot, and it's just very simple in that it's like, you've got what is their capacity is number 1 through 4. What is their propensity? So how frequently do they give? What is their affinity? Are they giving to organizations like yours? So it's not just, does this person have deep pockets, but are they actually donating, and are they donating to orgs like yours? So it's just to maybe make a little bit better of a match. Like it's truly that simple. And you're right, Jason. We're not, and part of it with a match, I think matches are magic. I can say on that for the quickest moment. What I love about matches is that they match the folks who have that major gift capacity, and they connect them to the rest of your donors, to both your mid-level and your grassroots donors. So when I go in, even though I'm specifically working with mid-level, I'm saying, do you have some conversations you're having right now in the major gifts? Is there somebody that you're always biting your nails of whether or not they're going to come in with their $25,000 gift on December 31st? Okay, so what if we make that $25,000 matched by everything else that happens? And that's great to talk about on the phone.
Yeah.
So I think that's great.
Love that.
I can get into these questions a little bit.
Let's get to Cassie's.
Yeah, so
Is that good?
Cassie, yeah, I think that's great. So Cassie, like saying, if you don't have a bunch of events, but you can see that you've got the metrics on your back end, that you can see if that person has watched a recent video, saw they opened an email, worry that it's a little creepy. I get you. So what happens, Cassie, like if you actually acknowledge that? So if you call them and say, hi, my name is Cassie Kelly. This is my role at this organization. I'm touching base, would love to get you more involved with us. And you can say, like, if you see, I don't see that you've got any giving history or anything, but I will say, like, technology, this makes me feel a little creepy, but I can see
Yeah.
that you opened our email. So that's amazing.
Yeah.
Or I can see that you saw our video. So I'd love to know. And then what's your follow-up, very personal question of like, I love that you opened the email. I'm curious, like, what you thought. You could talk about the content of the email. Or I saw you saw the video. I'm so curious how you came about it in the first place. So I would say, like, if it's feeling a little creepy to share those metrics, I think it's fine to, like, acknowledge your discomfort with it. It makes you feel really human. And, like, maybe you two can laugh about it. And I would say you have to experiment too. Like, see how your community is responding to that.
If you're that deep in the data, Kel, can I just post a follow-up question? It's a great question, Cassie. Thanks so much for sharing. I mean, can you say, hey, I'm assuming that you just got our most recent, message, that kind of thing? Or do you,
Sure.
I personally
don't
would
know.
not say, I saw that you opened our email. It makes me a little creepy to feel, to even acknowledge that. I know that definitely humanizes it. And and I don't want to color outside the lines because that's the whole point of this, is making it human and likable and relatable and trustworthy and all those things. But my 2 cents, Cassie, is just like, I would say, hey, I'm assuming you got our most recent email, or I'm assuming you saw that video on X. A lot of folks did. Hopefully you're following us there, or what have you. Like, that's okay too, right? If you're feeling uncomfortable about it.
I think I have to say, Cassie, none of my clients have gotten that deep into the data and mostly, my larger back question to you would be, if those are like, that's like the degree of connection you have with someone, I don't know that taking the time to, like, make that phone call to that person is necessarily your best use. Like, we could talk further about your larger strategy. But yeah, I don't know. I think either's fine. I think
That's what I was going to say.
Like, I'm assuming, but
there's no right or wrong
part
answer.
of me wants to just go with it and see what happens. But
well,
I was
going to say, Cassie, if this is what you're doing, sign up for a coaching call. I'm going to teach you how to do a people exercise, so that way you can take all these great strategies that Kel's got for making the call, and you'll know who to call. Because that's one of the things sometimes I think we make things harder than they are, because we think, well, I've got this data, I got to do something with it. I know that these 62 people opened up the email but never did anything. I open up emails all the time. Doesn't mean I'm going to do anything. I just clicked on it.
And we're not picking on you, Cassie. I just don't think open rates are enough.
But I think this is something really important, because who you call is as important as how you call them.
Exactly.
Now, because and the point what Kel's saying, this is making an assumption, okay? Because as she said, you've already given $1,000. We want you to come and give more. So this is somebody with a known relationship. So this is how to call the people we already have a relationship with. This is how to call we have some kind of connection. Somebody clicking on an email is not really a connection. And I mean this very respectfully.
Yeah, we're not picking it.
There's a lot lower hanging fruit that you can go get to spend your.
Agreed.
Because you've only got a finite amount of time. You want the most impact that you can. And sometimes, and I'm going to say this from my own personal experience, sometimes I'll start chasing stuff because it's almost like I don't want to have some success. And it's a weird thing. And I'm not saying this is you, Cassie, but I'm saying me.
Yeah.
It's almost like, well, I'm going to go try this really hard thing because I'm hoping that, it's almost like I don't want to succeed, because what happens if they answer and they go, well, what are you thinking? Because I'm not really sure what to do. I think there's so much low hanging fruit out there for you. Even because you said you don't do a whole lot of, events. It doesn't matter. There's other ways to go find the low-hanging fruit, and then to spend that valuable time you have, and all this because you want to make sure there's the potential there, is what I would say.
You want to tackle Brian's question, Kel?
Yeah, totally.
Thanks, Brian.
Yeah, Brian. So you're saying many of your donors attended a past event thanks to a board member intro. I find that asking about the donor/donor member relationship always fizzles fast. Any guidance? I would say, that's the thing, right? It's like everybody is their own focus group of one. You're going to get board members who come on board and they say, like, yeah, I've got all these contacts, I'm fine to share them. And then you start working with them and they hold them closer to their chest. So what I would do, part of this is about moving forward, Brian, is I would say when you're getting ready for these events, and so it's not just about asking the board members to bring their folks. How are you connected with the board member? The connectivity issue. When I ask the donor, how, so here's the thing, can you find that out beforehand? Can you
Yeah.
talk to the board
Yeah,
member,
for sure.
not to the donor? Like, can you get some more information, Brian,
Yeah.
from the board member as like, you know, the person who's on your team? And so where I was going even before that was like, see what information you can get. And I would actually recommend that maybe even you get like, if you can get your board together before the event, but that like, if you share, like, let's just talk really quickly. Here's who I'm bringing. Here's like some like Cliff Notes versions on who they are. Like, so everybody hears them, and you are like, you've got like your Fathom or whatever AI you use, or you've got, you know, somebody taking notes old school. But so you've got those notes going into the event about who these folks are. So you can be making the game plan of who you want to really make sure you get moment with before you're there. So part of it, it feels like if you could do all of that before, that'd be better. If you haven't done it, like I'm saying, go back, Brian, to your board and ask them for that information, not asking the donor.
Yeah.
Can
And for that
We can have a
introduction, of
deeper
course.
conversation. Yeah.
Brian,
Yeah.
and I think maybe I'm missing, but does it really matter? Does the connection really matter? Because if I asked Trevor to come to an event and you know, he came to an event because I asked him, and then you go back and say, well, hey, you know, hey, Kel, this is Jason. I just wanted to let you know I really appreciate you know, the introduction. Trevor told me to give you a call and suggested that you might be able to help us, and you start doing this, and I'll let Kel put her spin on the
Sure.
vernacular. But when you're making that connection, it really doesn't matter. I just said, hey, he just, you know, I know that you came, you know, you came to the event, and I know you know Trevor, and you don't have to know how. Doesn't really matter. Well, we're partners. We're this. You
Yeah.
know, how do you get? I guess that's where I'm kind of coming from. Is sometimes I think it's back to that thing. We start going off in the weeds.
Yeah.
Overthinking it maybe a little
Kel
bit.
speaks to this really well, and I'm
Yeah.
going to ask you to come back on, Kel, and kind of
Yeah, sure.
clarify that. I've got some kind of relationship with you. You came to our event.
That's 1 degree of separation, if not less.
Well,
to me,
but
you know what I
if you
mean?
came to the event, hey, sorry, I
That's
didn't get to
zero.
I know you were at the last
Yeah.
event. Sorry, I didn't get to meet you. You know,
Yeah.
Trevor says you're a good guy, and
Yeah.
hey, I want to go. I'd love to, you know, get connected. That's why I'm calling you, because we've got something coming up, and I'd like to get
Yeah.
you involved. I mean,
Yeah.
I think we get so caught up with these little details, the minutia, that don't really matter.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Okay.
Brian,
Yeah.
yeah. So Jason, yeah, I'm with you. I think if we can have that information while we get into the call, it's helpful. If we don't, like, yes, just make the call. And to your point, Brian, I think here's the difference. Right now, what you've been after is a quote unquote connective tissue question.
Yeah.
And I say, what if instead you're asking a curiosity question? So a question that you at your organization are actually genuinely curious to hear about. So if you're thanking them for being at the event, even if you don't know how they're like, I know you came with Susan, so glad she brought you. I think that was the first time like you've been with us at all. I'm so curious what your takeaways were about our organization, or how, like, thank you for being there. I'd love to know, like, even what you thought of the event. I mean, sometimes people love that. They love to like truly be like, oh, I want to get your opinion of, you know, I know people who are
Yes.
going to a lot of these events
Yes.
have big opinions. You know, it's like the board
Yeah.
members who want to be with you at all the tastings because they care about the food. Fine.
Yeah.
Like whatever somebody's in is. And so like, yes, if you know that person like was there because they were excited for the performer, or you know they were excited about the venue. If you have any of those details moving into the conversation, rad. But
That's a
if
road
not, you can get them while you're in that call. So
Yeah.
so does that make sense? So I'm saying instead of connecting, like focusing on connecting questions, focus on curious questions. And so
Yeah.
like that are going to expand the relationship.
I want to give an
Yeah.
example of something that happened a long time ago. This is in one of my telephone companies, and I was on a sales call with a guy, and he walks in the door, and we were training, we were going through the stuff, and he goes, and he saw a picture of the guy's family behind him. Oh, hey, nice looking family there, you know, and he starts talking about this. Those are your kids. And the guy just sits there and looks at him for a minute. Yeah, she left me 2 weeks ago, took my kids, and I haven't seen them since then. I don't know where she's at.
Ugh, yeah.
And my point,
Ooh.
where I'm going with that was, this
Wah,
was a
wah,
great lesson. Yeah,
wah.
it was a great lesson for men to look, don't waste people's time.
Well,
You're
yeah.
trying to make a personal thing and make it real personal and emotional and make that connection.
Yeah.
Sometimes let's just get to Kel's point, get to it.
Yeah,
This
but
is why I'm
Hey.
calling. Hey, I know you came to our event. Golly, it was I wish I could have met you.
So cool. Yeah.
here's what I will say though. I've been on lots of conversations that have gone to like very personal places
Mm-hmm.
that people on the phone, especially not being able to see you, will sometimes share things like that. So even
Yeah.
if Jason had been like, "Oh, I know you brought your family. How are your kids?" Like that feels like, if you've got that information, a
Sure.
very innocuous thing. So
For sure.
I mean, I've been there. Like part of it is we have to take care of ourselves of what do we have the capacity on that day to hold space for.
Mm-hmm.
But I've had people tell me and my clients like very personal things about
Yeah.
going through a divorce, the
Yeah.
loss of a loved one, being sick themselves. And I always say, like, that's up to you, what you have the capacity to hold space for that,
Mm-hmm.
even that day. Because
Well,
sometimes it is that it's like, I'm so sorry to
Mhm.
hear that. And I'm sending so much positive energy your way. And like, I, haven't been through that myself, but I'm sure that's really hard. If this is not the right time for us to have this conversation, no worries. I can circle
Yeah.
back in another couple weeks. But like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I've actually found that sometimes even stepping in it with people actually makes the relationship deeper.
You were building a relationship. That's what you're doing.
Yeah,
That's what
well,
you're
I
doing. You're building a
completely
relationship.
agree.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
if that's where the conversation goes, then you
Absolutely.
can go there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I'm saying from the very beginning, it's that awkward
Yeah.
getting.
Yeah.
It's back to the ick
Oh,
thing we
totally,
talk about.
totally.
Yeah,
No,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
Where you're
exactly.
you're
Yeah,
walking
yeah,
in
yeah.
there going, "Hey, how you doing? How do you know Trevor?" Well,
Yes. Well, yeah, you could know that. To Brian's
Yeah.
point, it's like you either know that or you don't.
I
I love
think-
that. I see what you're saying, Jason. Thank you.
yeah, I'm just saying.
Brian,
I think that instead of it's kind of like we were talking about before. There's low hanging fruit here. The
yes.
connections, they're easy. You already have some kind of relationship with them, or the organization does in this case. That's the one you want to key on, not the board. The board member may come up in the conversation and you guys can take off and go wherever you want to with it.
Yeah.
But, I always say, we talk about this a lot. Once we have a relationship with somebody with our company has a relationship with that person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I may not have ever talked to him, but whenever I do talk to him, I'm going to talk to him like we've had a relationship, like I've known him forever because my company does.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing with a nonprofit. You may not have ever talked to them, but they've been to an event, they bought a raffle ticket, maybe they came to something. You assume the relationship and take it from there. I think is the way that you're going to get through those stumbling blocks, is what I would call them.
Brian, you're the man for sharing. I think it's awesome. And I think you're on the right path. I want to like just like a parting shot here before we get to another question. Rhino had a question about voicemails. I want you to hit. Kel. Brian, if a board member invites someone to your event, and that once again that connection's already been made, and you reach out to them and ask for their feedback and opinion, like Kel said, and it provides you a roadmap for future events and further solidifies that relationship. I'm going to go ahead and tell you something. Not a lot of other people are calling them in the same capacity. Kel touches a lot of clients and coaches a lot of people in the space to do just that. We tell folks to thank their donors incessantly. Kel's worked with thousands of organizations. 100 people signed up for this webinar. We work with 2,000 events. We'll be in 2,000 events this year. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now, though, that's not a lot. That's paltry in comparison to how many organizations are out there doing this. And what they're
1.5 million.
What they're not doing, Brian, is calling the board member and thanking them and asking them for feedback. Some are this many, but not this many.
You're so right, Trevor. And
yes.
I don't know anyone else who does what I do. Like I
Correct.
truly don't know anyone else who is focusing on bespoke mid-level fundraising conversations in our industry right now. So like to your point, and when I see, at the top, Kim saying like phone call avoider here, help. Kim, just by picking up the phone, you are heads and tails above what like most other organizations are doing in terms of their outreach. Also, I just want to make a shout out, James. I don't know if you were here at the top or not. If you were and I missed you, but James, we're actually talking about our conversation and like number
Awesome.
one versus number two. So anyway, I just want to say hi.
Nah, cool. Thanks for coming,
Yeah.
James. Yeah,
Yeah,
Ryan,
so-
Hey,
I'm gonna.
before we get to Ryan's question, I
Yeah.
want to, can I pose something out there real quick? It was a really good point. Now it's gone. Okay.
Well, James,
Mad Cow kicked
Yeah.
in.
cool.
On
Brian,
with the,
Brian, I want to say this though, just like once again, because I'm so passionate about the fact that folks aren't picking up the phone, and okay. If
Oh,
a
I know what it
board member has capacity, we'll just go ahead and assume that they do. Maybe they're already given your organization that's a criteria, maybe not. Who knows? And they invite someone. They run with a similar crowd. Well, the folks that they invited are probably going to other events. And differentiation in this case, and actually picking up the phone to thank them, not necessarily even asking them for money, but asking them to get involved and to see what you're doing and why, and all the questions that Kel laid out. No other organization is doing that. I'm just telling you. And differentiation is stronger than competition in this case, because you are not competing with those other orgs
100%.
if you're the only one doing it. You know what I mean? So good stuff, Brian.
if you're
Totally,
that's
totally.
here's what I was going to say, and this will take 2 seconds. If you're struggling making phone calls to people, practice and get warmed up, getting comfortable with it by thanking people.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we always say,
totally.
hey, listen, if you
Make-
don't
make
know what
your-
to say thank you.
Yeah,
You can
just-
never go
Yeah.
wrong.
And
You
what
know
I will
mean?
say, the one thing that I recommend you don't do in your thank you calls is say, don't worry, to explicitly say, don't worry, I'm not asking you for money.
No, don't
Because
set that tone.
A, you
Don't set that
never
tone.
know if they want to, number one. And number two, either it's you or somebody else in your organization will be calling them to ask
Yeah.
for money at some point.
Yeah.
So, but
Hey,
I'm with you. Go
Can
ahead.
I interrupt before we get to the voicemail question?
Yes,
Hey,
go for it.
Kim, if you wouldn't mind, Kim, will you tell us why you're a phone call avoider so we can unpack that? Just if we can get you over the hump, so to speak, or to take the plunge, as I like to call it. It's like why is it that way? And I had a kind of like a A and B question there. It's like, a lot of times, Kel, and I think I heard you talk about this on a video recently. Maybe it was on the podcast with us. I'm not sure, but and Jason and I have talked about this ad nauseum. A lot of times fundraisers have a difficult time inviting folks to give, asking, whatever. It's icky to them, okay?
Yeah.
Because they're thinking with their own checkbooks and they're caught up in like, okay, I could never write that. And that's not a bad thing. That's not what defines you as a human being, okay? But how do we get folks out of that mindset of thinking with their own wallets, checkbooks? Like, and I think that actually, I'm presupposing this, but I have a hunch that might be what stops people from picking up the phone. You know what I mean?
Yes, Trevor. I don't remember if we talked about it or not, but I will say that is definitely part of what I do is because I was so successful at this in my 20s into my early 30s. And I personally raised like $6 million, like I said, like mostly in gifts. My gosh, under 2,000 actually in less than 8 years. And I was like, but when I reverse engineered this of why could I do that? And the way I could do that is I was super personal, vulnerable, specific in every part of the conversation. I was still specific in what I'm about to say, but it wasn't personal anymore, which was the amount. So I just was able to, like, from a very young age, who knows, I'm sure it was part of it is just like my position of privilege, but was able to be really specific of the ask is the ask. And like you're deciding the ask before you're getting on the phone. And so it's not how much does $1,000 mean to Kel or to Trevor or to Jason. It's this is like we've determined is the amount we're going to ask from this person. So to not personalize the amount. And so, and I have said this before, but I think it is really important to say two things. And part of that is to never say, I know 1,000 is a lot, but because for all you know, they're about to give you 10K. And also to not say, okay, I know you can't do 1,000. Could you just do 500 or 250 or 25? You don't know that person could be doing mental gymnastics right now. They want to give to you and they're figuring out how. So don't ever give a qualitative quality to the amount you're asking for.
I think that might offend sometimes. I actually
100%.
think that,
And it could be very hurtful. And
I'd be like, don't speak for me. Don't speak for my wallet or my checkbook or where my emotion lies for the organization. And I will also say you just uncovered something that's really obvious, but I'm Captain Obvious when it comes to this kind of stuff, where it's just like, hey, and if it feels, you call it icky, tie it back to the mission and how many kids you're helping. For the, you know what I mean? If the $1,000 makes you feel icky because you don't have two nickels rubbed together, that's okay. You're doing God's work. You know what I mean? It's really okay to tie it back, So Oh, it's just so good. There's so much there. There's so much there. But yeah, I was just curious, like what gives folks that trepidation? A lot of times I think it's just like, oh, it's just a lot of money in my world or what have you, which is
Yeah.
okay. Totally
Well,
human.
and I also think some people just aren't using the phone in the rest of their lives either. And
Hmm.
so like
Hmm.
my husband is very introverted, even though he's an actor. And
Yeah.
so he will say like, oh, I don't want to give more context. I just want to get off the phone and get like, and
Yeah.
his natural impulse is to keep it transactional. And I'm like, that's never how you're going to build a relationship and actually like get what you're asking for on a call
Mhm.
if you are keeping it as like cold and transactional as
Yeah.
possible. And so it
Very
is
surface.
very
Yeah.
funny to like now hear him on the phone with the vet and hear like the warmth in his voice and like sharing more of
Mm,
the context. And I'm like, good job, Michael, you're doing it. So
that's awesome.
I love it.
That's
I don't,
awesome.
Kim's not here anymore. I don't think so. I
No,
think
she's not.
Okay,
So
cool.
we
let's
can
go to
go
the
ahead and
voicemail. Let's
yeah,
jump
let's
on
talk
that
about
voicemail.
voicemails. So yeah, so Ryan, I appreciate you asking. People ask me about this all the time, about voicemails. And so you're saying like for you saying it is one-sided. That is true. You're not going to get over that. But here's the deal for fundraisers who have the task of making ask over the phone. Yes, there is a way to make that connection. So here's what I'm going to recommend. You're only going to leave voicemails if there is like a very close connection already to the organization. So what I would say is, and that very close could just be like the examples we've been giving of like, oh, you were at this event, but this would not be, I would not recommend that like someone that you have to really like make a really strong tie, like tie them in that you have a longer rope to tie between you and them, like that's something you've got to really think about. So the way voicemails work best is if this person already has a giving history with your organization. That's what's going to be the easiest and the best way. If not, that they came to an event. So what I would say is that in terms of leaving the voicemails, they're going to come in the most handy when you are in like a time specific constraint. So when you are like wrapping up a fundraiser. So for instance, I will say like for Giving Tuesday and into December, that's a really great time. Or if your org has a June 30th end of fiscal and you have a spring campaign, or you're trying to fill seats for your gala, that's happening in 2 weeks. So the idea with these voicemails is that I will recommend that you actually probably have written out some messaging. I would not say a script because then you'll just end up reading it.
Yeah.
That won't be good. But almost everything I would say in that first tent pole, I would just go ahead and say all of that, plus a little bit of temple number 2, temple number 3. You can go back and watch last week's video to see all of that. But I'm going to recommend that you get on that call and do the same thing. So if I was calling you Ryan, and let's say like, I would say, for these purposes, it's like a spring fundraiser, right? And so you're trying to raise $100,000 by the end. Let's just say it's happening by April 1st, right? So I leave you a message and I say, hi, Ryan, this is Kel Haney. I'm the executive director of organization XYZ. So lovely. You did a donation of $1,000 back in November. That was amazing. So appreciate that. Wanted to check in. Would love to get you more involved. We do have this event coming up in the summer. We'll make sure we let you know. But in the meantime, we actually are on deadline. We're trying to raise $100,000 by the end of this month. We're currently at 80,000. So we've got 20% to go. We're getting there. But I was just going to shoot for the moon and see if there was a world in which you could do 1,500 right now that would get us so that we are now only 18.5 away from our goal, which would be so great. So you're welcome to hop on our website. Here's the website. Or if you want to talk on the phone, that's great. And regardless, really do think about joining us for the summer. We'll make sure we get you an invite for our next in person. And thanks for being part of our community. So it will be long. Like Ryan, there's no way to get around
By
that.
design.
It will be
Yeah.
long by design. And I
Yeah.
want it to feel akin to like writing a handwritten thank you note to somebody. And what's nice is that we now have these transcriptions. The other thing I didn't say in that example that I should have was I'll also put this in an email for you. So then you
Yeah.
can follow up immediately.
I was going to
with
ask you that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to
So
send you an email. Yeah.
yeah, so you've got it. But the big thing is to contextualize how were they involved in the past? Why do you need them involved right now? Numbers, specificity of numbers is everything. So to be able to say, and I watched like smile come across your face, Trevor, when I was like, we're getting there. We're
Yeah.
80% of the way there. But
I
that
love it.
event is at any time. It's like, we just started. You'd be one of our first people. You would get us,
Yeah.
we're almost at 25%.
Yeah.
We're
Humanize
almost
it.
at a third. We're almost at
Yeah.
halfway, 2/3, 3/4, 80%, 10% left. So
Yeah.
there's always that, like, where are we in terms of the event?
Well, you're inviting them with that. You're drawing a great picture, right? A great
Exactly. And like,
snapshot of what's going on.
yeah,
Yeah.
and letting them know where they are, where we are in the process and how their impact will directly affect our process. But specificity, specific amount, and a specific amount on a voicemail works.
Yeah.
And you would
Totally.
not believe how many people will not pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And then it's also important to tell them the next time they're going to hear from you. So I'm always leaving that in a voicemail. I'm going to recommend you
Yeah.
do that in an email. Always like, here's the next time. So it's not that they're just hearing from you when we're asking them for money. That
Totally.
it's a
Kel, do
ongoing
you see that the
conversation.
new technology helps with that, with the
Yeah.
fact that all these
Oh my
voicemails are
gosh.
getting into text?
Yeah.
That's
The
It's
you
the
most
know,
recent
best.
that
update
was
for
an
that has
aha
been
for me
amazing.
whenever you were
Yeah.
talking about that, because
Yeah.
I just don't. I would, listening to a voicemail is just a struggle, and that's what. But now I love it when people
Yeah.
leave a voicemail because I can read it.
Yeah.
Listen,
Oh my gosh. The
we're-
first time I saw it come up on my phone, I lost my mind.
You're
I was
like,
like, this is going to
"What?"
be nothing but helpful. It
I was
definitely
like,
helps.
they took the time to leave me a text that was that long. That was really thoughtful of them. Hey, I got something. I'm such a weirdo about this kind of stuff that, with all due respect to myself, I'm such a weirdo about this stuff. I say things, or I've caught myself in the past saying things when I've been making outreach calls. It's been a long time, but I'd say things in voicemails because I was a huge believer in voicemails because I just knew I sounded different. My vernacular was different. I was very specific. I was never fearful, all those things. But I would say things because especially we're talking about the phone, but now we're getting into the email a little bit. We're going to follow up with an email because of the filters with emails and whatnot, and I don't know how much communication has gone back and forth between your organization and the supporter. I would say things like, hey, do me a favor, just shoot me a response to make sure you got it. I want to make sure that email landed in your inbox. I know that sounds really simple and really weird. However, I would say things, and they go, yeah, okay. I'm expecting them to go, yeah, okay, yeah, let's check it out real quick. Because I just want to make sure that it landed in your inbox. And I also knew that no one would ever leave a voicemail where they said things like that. So I call it like they're getting so many voicemails, they're getting so many calls. We're not the only organization or people asking them for money. I just thought I always called it interrupting the loop, almost like a neuro-linguistic programming, like old school NLP thing, where I was like, hey, yeah, I'm going to shoot that email. Do me a favor, just respond to it. Just make sure I know you got it. And it also kind of made me feel good if they go, hey, got it. But just like a little tiny twist of the dial, just ever more engaging. So yeah, anyway, it's very, very simple.
Hey, we've got 8 minutes left. I want to ask Kel something. So this is for the people out there and we know from studies that 90% of people have call reluctance, and it's automatic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I think the number's probably more like about 98%, quite frankly.
Yeah, no joke.
So top three things that you can give everybody listening that to do to get moving, just to get to top three things that they could do. Quick start to get
up and get going.
Yeah, I'd say just go ahead and take 5 minutes on like your portfolio list, however you have all of this. Just take 5 minutes and say, who are these 5 people that are not returning my emails, or these 5 people that you're like, I would really don't know why they've fallen off my radar, and I would really love to find out why. Like, just truly take 5 minutes, make a list of 5 people, and decide these calls should take 5 minutes. Like, in half an hour, you should be able to make those calls. And if they pick up and you have a 10-minute long conversation, amazing. Like, give yourself an hour, but just do that now. Just make that list and be like, who are those people that you're like, why aren't it's so weird. I don't know why they dropped off. I don't know why I haven't heard from them. Call them, ask them. That's what I say. Also, Ryan wrote in the chat, yes, exactly. To me, the call to action, you want a call to action in the voicemail, and the call to action should be to give if you're in an active campaign in that moment. And so the call to action is not like, call me back so we can talk about this further. Like, you can offer that and say, if you have any questions, if you want to talk, obviously feel free to give me a call. But the call to action is, you're so great. Could you do 1,500, in the next 2 weeks while we're wrapping up this campaign?
Yep. Love it. So good.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Good. Last call for questions. Oh, great. Yeah, thanks, Rhino. Rhino linked, easiest way to reach Kel. Obviously,
Yeah.
amazing on LinkedIn. Be
Mhm.
sure to, you're probably all following Kel on LinkedIn. If you're
I
in the
hope so.
nonprofit world, you're already following her. But
We're working on it.
but nonetheless, if you're not, there's a link to just get to her real quick. There you
Yeah.
go.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Well, let's give something away. What do y'all think?
Okay, it sounds fun. Yeah, it sounds fun.
Oh, wow. Don't be so excited. All right.
No, it's great. Thanks so much, Kel.
Yeah.
Jay's gonna pull up a winner, but any last questions or positive statements or anything like that, please feel free to add those right now. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'd love if even as we're doing doing the giveaway, like if any of you it's good for me to know as I do a lot of these ask me anything type things, like what was like your biggest takeaway.
Cool.
If you want to just drop something like that in the chat, I just would love to know what your takeaways are. Also, feel free to reach out to me. You can also reach out to me on my website. If you want 30 minutes of my time, I'm happy to give that to anybody
Cool.
and talk to you about my offerings a little more too. If you want.
Rhino, if you can grab that on Kel's website real quick, put that in chat, that'd be fantastic.
Okay, I've got a winner.
Come on now.
Jillian Melvin Scully, you're the winner.
Okay, right on.
Jillian, just reach up there, touch your screen, push the button. Don't push it again. There we go. All right. And here comes the big winner. Holy smokes. Kentucky Bourbon Tour for two.
Oh, wow. That's fun.
So
right on.
You just won a trip that you're going to get.
Jillian.
Yeah, you just won a trip. Congratulations that you
Heck
get to
yeah.
Oh my gosh,
fundraiser.
thank you. I love it.
Yeah, so you get to.
Yeah, you can use that at your next event. And Jillian,
Yep.
someone from our team will be in touch. That's the world that we're in. We love the phone so much, but we love auction items too a lot. But
Love it.
we love raising money, and we love being able to share these conversations with folks like you, Kel. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you so much, Trevor. Thank you, Jason. Thanks everybody for being here today.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much, Kel.
Yep.
You rock. Really
Yeah, you're the
appreciate it.
best.
Really
Hey,
appreciate
Ryan,
you.
great. We will get a blog post out. That sounds really cool. We can definitely transcribe that. Thanks, everybody. And be sure to go to the HGA Fundraising YouTube page to watch episode 1. You can check out Hey Nonprofits Raise More Money, listen to the podcast that we do with Kel, all this stuff. We touch so many great points that everyone can use, of course. So thank you so very much. Appreciate you, Cassie. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time, everybody. All right. Thanks, Kel. Thanks, Jay.
See you guys soon.
Talk to y'all soon. Have a great
Bye.
afternoon, everyone. Stay warm.